Is edging a relapse on NoFap? Well, first of all, the definition of a relapse is when you break whatever rules you have set for yourself on your journey. And here's the thing, I don't know what rules you have set for yourself on your journey. But with NoFap in general, I would say that edging while using adult websites is a big relapse. Yes. Now stay with me here because I'm about to tell you something that will absolutely blow your mind. Not your load, but your mind. Here's the thing. Dopamine has many functions in our brain, but dopamine's main role is to assist us with things that will help us survive and reproduce. This means that whenever there's an opportunity for mating, the anticipation of that activity will drive up your dopamine levels. And this is biology's way of helping us go for it. It is there to push us towards it. Now, once you understand this, I could ask you the following question. If dopamine spikes in order to help us reproduce, when during your fapping session would dopamine be at its highest point? Can you figure that one out? Well, that would be right before you are about to ejaculate, to really make sure you go for it and bust. Because that's what we need to do in order to carry our DNAs to the next generation. You see, your reptilian brain thinks your fapping session to porn is real mating. And so now you might say, oh come on, my brain is not that stupid. It clearly knows the difference. Well, you probably know the difference, I'll give you that. But the reptilian part of your brain does not. You see, it's a primordial part of your brain that does not use reasoning or logic. I mean, just think about it. Why would you even get an erection from looking at the porn otherwise? If your reptilian brain operated purely on logic, it would say, well, since this is not real, there's no point in making him aroused by it, because my job is to make him reproduce, not to make his keyboard all sticky. You know. Okay, and so there are two things you need to know about edging, and that was the first thing, that your dopamine levels are at the absolute highest point they can be right before you are about to ejaculate. And that's the problem with edging, that you can keep yourself right on that edge, backing off a bit, going forward and backing off without going over. And then you keep yourself there on that edge for a very long time. And now, with the help of online porn and all the unending novelty out there, you can do this sometimes even for hours at end, because novelty also helps to jack up your dopamine. You see, without online porn, edging for a very long time would be too boring for most people. But since porn tube sites started rolling out, it has become a real big problem. As soon as your dopamine levels start to drop, you can instantly just click to a new porn star or a new category. You can escalate into more shocking and extreme stuff, things you haven't seen before. And by keeping yourself on the edge like this, your dopamine levels remain sky high all the way through. In fact, did you know that by doing this edging stuff, this is the absolute highest dopamine response you can get without actually using chemical drugs? Your brain is literally taking a bath in dopamine for sometimes hours at end. And by the way, I'm not shaming or pointing fingers here. In fact, I myself am a former porn addict who has done a lot of edging in his days. So I speak from experience here. Now, the second thing you need to know about edging is that when your brain is taking a bath in dopamine like this for a very long time, something scary can start to happen inside your head. You see, your brain kicks in a counter mechanism in order to protect itself from all the unnatural amounts of dopamine. And this is how we, with time, can cause a messed up dopamine system and something called desensitization. And a messed up dopamine system is not good because it can lead to all kinds of issues like, for example, lack of energy, lack of motivation and drive, lack of concentration and focus, increased anxiety and depression, an inability to experience joy and pleasure, and on and on. Now please stay with me here as I would like to show you a really short 2-minute video I have from a presentation I made on exactly how this desensitization process takes place inside your brain. It will be so helpful for you to understand this because of several reasons. So the sound will change a bit here now, but just watch this 2-minute presentation that starts right now.
Alright, so we are back on the animation board and now we are going to take a look at the desensitization process. In other words, what can happen if you keep overusing instant gratification, super stimulating things. So what you are looking at here is a part of the dopamine system in action. To the left we have the sending neuron and to the right the receiving neuron. See those small dots there? Well, that is our friend dopamine right there. And dopamine does its magic by attaching to the small dopamine receptors here, the small slots that the dopamine molecules fit perfectly into. And when dopamine has sparked into those, it is then we feel the effects of dopamine. Now, what happens if we expose our brain to very stimulating things is that the brain starts going, oh no, now there's too much dopamine here. I need to protect myself from it. And it does so by reducing the number of dopamine receptors, as you can see on the animation eraser right now. And the thing is, with less dopamine receptors, those small dopamine molecules now have less slots to park into, which means we feel less effects of whatever dopamine a certain activity gives us. Just a short example here. Let's say that a certain activity gives you a certain amount of fun and pleasure. And let's just for the sake of this example come up with a unit for that fun and pleasure. Let's call the unit FN. As in, fun. Okay, so then let's say that every Wednesday night you have band practice where you play your musical instrument. And that activity is giving you, let's say, 56 FN. Well, if you desensitize your reward system by, for example, watching way too much porn, now when you go to your band practice, even though the sending neuron is sending you 56 FN, it will only feel like maybe 39 FN, because you now have less of those small dopamine receptors. And the scary part here is a receptor is a receptor, meaning this feeling less effects of dopamine is now gonna be true for every single activity you do. Every single activity, not just music or porn or whatever, but every single activity. This is the neurobiological process behind desensitization, also known as getting a numb pleasure response or a disrupted dopamine system.
Okay, so I hope you found this interesting and now you also understand that no matter if you call edging a relapse on NoFap or not, if you are edging to porn and think that you are doing yourself a favor by not busting any nuts, you are sorely mistaken, because edging to porn for hours on end is literally the worst thing you can do for your dopamine system without actually using chemical drugs, no matter if you ejaculate or not. In fact, it would actually be much better for you to just bust quickly and get your session out of the way than what it is to keep yourself on the edge and going back and forward with your dopamine levels sky high for hours on end. And again, I'm not moral preaching here. I speak from experience when I say you can really lose track of time during these edging sessions. And at my lowest point, I sometimes wasted 5, 6, sometimes even up to 7 hours clicking from video to video, endlessly looking for the perfect one to, finish on, so to speak, which obviously never comes because there's always something new to chase. But the point is, oh man, how my dopamine system took a serious hit from all those hourly long edging sessions. But the good news is that when you get off the porn and stop doing things like this, your dopamine system can heal, and you can even do things to help speed up the process, like for example doing different dopamine fasting protocols. Although here I have to say there is no direct research made on how much or even if that would help. But this is what I have noticed with myself and heard from other PMO rebooters as well. And if you think about it, dopamine fasting is the exact opposite of dopamine overstimulation. So it does make sense. But again, no one can promise anything like that because we just don't know. But speaking of your dopamine system, if you are curious about how much or if your edging sessions have desensitized you, then you can take a short dopamine quiz I have made and get your personal dopamine score. Now this quiz is something I created just with my personal experience as a reference point, so it should be taken with a big grain of salt. But it is 100% free and can be really interesting to take. You can find that quiz by clicking on the screen right here or by clicking on the link under the video. Make sure to subscribe for more videos like this, and also take a look at this video right here to learn more about some tips and tricks to heal your brain after porn addiction.